This is a video essay about the 1952 Max Ophuls film Le Plaisir. Apologies for my terrible French. But before that, or rather entwined with that, I also want to tell you 3 stories. And I'm going to tell you my stories from the safety of the dark. I'm worried because my stories are old and you are modern, but we'll see. Here's the first one. I was staying at my grandparents' house, I have no idea why, in, let's say 1985, when I came down with a fever. Nothing life-threatening, but all I was really able to do was look at things and breathe. Most of what I was looking at was films I'd already seen, but my grandfather decided that instead of me rewatching the same old films for the 100th time, he would show me some new films, and he did. I lay there in the grip of the fever and watched Le Cop, the French version of Three Men and a Little Baby, Trois Hommes et le Baby, and the Max Ophuls film La Ronde. All 3 films were fantastic in their own way, but La Ronde was something special, and the fever dream experience I had of watching it was something that stayed with me with that particular quality of a barely remembered dream, something that never actually happened to me. Fast forward a few years to story number 2, and it's 2020, a year in which we all probably accumulated a few stories. My 2020 story centralizes on the death of a good friend, Carl. He was like a brother to me. He was diagnosed with stage 4 cancer early in 2020. There was optimism to begin with, good signs, but as the year played out, the cancer did not respond to the treatment in the way it was hoped, and he passed away in October. I took Carl's death badly. Very badly. It crushed me. I got a bit clumsy in the days following his passing, and I ended up having an accident and going into hospital myself. I was in there for 2 nights, no phone, no books, no internet, just me and my pain and my thoughts. As if all of this wasn't bad enough, my partner had lost her father earlier in the year, and I was now staying in the same hospital that my partner's father passed away in. This was all just another log on the fire of my thoughts as I shambled around the ward. Eventually I was discharged and I went home, but I was in a much worse state than I'd thought. Walking was hard, moving was difficult, even breathing caused me pain. So I did what I always do in this situation. I lay in a stupor and watched films. Now when I'm ill or convalescing, what I want from my films is for them to be black and white, possibly silent. Colour and noise are to be avoided. I ran through the 1920s, the 30s, skipped the 40s like any good fan of cinema, and then I wanted something different. I got caught up in those hazy memories of a film I'd seen when ill as a child. I wanted to recapture the taste of that fever dream. I wanted La Ronde. But not owning a copy of the film, I ended up watching a different Max Ophuls film, one I hadn't seen before, but for some reason owned a copy of, Le Plaisir. How to explain it? Le Plaisir is a portmanteau film, 3 short stories, all tied together by the largely off-screen voice of a narrator who is playing the role of the writer of the stories, Guy de Maupassant. Maupassant was the king of short stories for a while there, and if you're a fan of reading and have never read him, then I would thoroughly recommend it. The film opens with a story about an old man trying to recapture his youth. It moves on to a story about women from a brothel attending the confirmation of a child, and it ends with a story about an artist and his muse. Each story is very Maupassant, an evocative picture of a world now lost to us, but imbued with a rich kind of modernism. Makes them very relatable. Now Max Ophuls, if you've never seen any of his films before, is a good match for these kinds of stories. His films are decorative, baroque in the traditional sense of the word. He is what Mark Cousins calls the bauble. His films are ornate, ostentatious, bombastic. To get an idea of this, look at this moment from the first story. A doctor asks for a pair of scissors. Allegedly, the crew were expecting, at this moment, one character to simply pass the doctor the pair of scissors, but Max had other ideas. Instead, he spent an entire day filming this long, complicated shot of the scissors being sourced, runs all the way down there, gets them, runs all the way back. The crew simply couldn't believe that all of this extra work would be added to the shoot, particularly considering that none of this someone walks a whole bunch to fetch a pair of scissors was in the script at all. But that's how Max makes films. Or look at the introduction of the brothel and its inhabitants from the second story. The set ended up being something that Ophuls couldn't move the camera through as planned, so he created this through the windows way of observing and of capturing all of the characters and all of their movements in these long, complicated camera crane movements. Max Ophuls is making effort where effort was not expected. He's making cinema out of moments that are arguably unimportant. That's what it is to be alive, making effort where effort is not expected, making life out of moments that are arguably unimportant. So how did this hit me in 2020? What was I thinking about? Well, let me move on to my third story, which is all the other people who are no longer with us. And let's begin with John Henning Orton. Norwegian musician and friend who I worked with for years and who created the soundtracks for all of the Look Think Films shorts and features. John passed away in 2016. At the time, he and I were working on the soundtrack to a film. In fact, he recorded the piece of music you are listening to just a few weeks before he passed away. I will let you feel however you want to feel about that. How did I feel about it? I felt awful. I knew John was ill, but he never mentioned how ill he was. And after he passed, I was left with the feeling that I had had him working when he should have been spending time with his loved ones. I'm sure John would disagree with this, but that's how I felt. A few years later, another friend of mine passed away. Here he is, on camera, in a short I made in 1999. There's another moment in the same film where you can see Carl's feet, Carl, who passed away in 2020. My films and my collection of people who are no longer with us. My life and my collection of friends who are no longer with me. As if all of this wasn't enough, or related to this story, my filmmaking journey began following the death of my mother. Something I've been trying and failing to make sense of since it happened, and something I'll continue trying to make sense of. At time of recording, it's 2024, and, most recently, the man who introduced me to Max Ophuls, my grandfather, is also now no longer with us. What do we do with this? What is the role that we, the survivors, play in respect to those who are no longer with us? What is it that we are asked to continue being witness to as we continue being able to breathe in and out and experiencing the world? This is what I'd like to bring to my experience of watching Le Plaisir. Convalescing in 2020, watching the flickering light show from 1952, what really struck me about Le Plaisir was the experience of being alive. Oh, to be young and in love. Oh, to be loved. Oh, to want to be young. Oh, to be a child. Oh, to bear witness to a glory greater than ourselves. Oh, to wake in the dark and take in the miracle of the night sky. Oh, to sit with friends. Oh, to be alive. There are a number of films which trigger this feeling in me, the joy of what it is to be alive, to be in the world, but Le Plaisir evokes it very strongly, much stronger than most. There is a theory that there are two types of pain to our lives. The dull ache of experiences that we have to go through but have no strong feelings for, like the pain of a job. And then there is the sharp pain, the blade that cuts us deep, of that which matters to us. The pain of something you are passionate about, whatever that is. The Plaisir cuts me with that sharp knife. There is a real sadness to each of its stories. But that sadness is something that matters, something that is important to the characters in the stories, and something that is important to us, the living people who are sitting in the dark and watching the flickering light show. Le Plaisir is pain, but Le Plaisir is joy, movement, love, laughter, creating, smoking, dancing. Oh, to be alive. Oh, to be alive. You, watching this now, listening to me, you are alive. And maybe you're filled with sadness or finding life difficult, but there is a real joy to being a participant in this world, witnessing everything it has to offer. There are films out there that will remind you of this, that will light a candle inside you, keep a flame burning. I don't know what these films are. Maybe you haven't found them yet, or maybe you watched them years ago in a fever dream as a child, and something will happen tomorrow that will unlock these memories, release them, and reunite you with that excitement of what it is to be alive.
Okay. Okay. All right. Hello.
Grandpa? Maybe you could come over and read it again to me tomorrow.
As you wish.